Let's get this out of the way. Hey, welcome back to my studio. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Catherine, but my family calls me Yaya, so you can call me that too. Just having a lavender iced matcha this morning with homemade lavender syrup and some crushed lavender buds on top, just for good measure. Oh, and I'm drinking it out of this little cup I made. It's been more or less 6 months since I started building out this studio, the space that I'm sitting in right now. I have been spending a lot of time here and really liking the way I've set up the space. Finally feels more lived in, to the point where I'm like, okay, it's time to do a proper studio tour. I figured I'd make this video a little bit more fun to watch by making something for myself. Hint. Has to do with what I'm drinking right now and using that to show you around. And yes, I will be sharing how much it cost me in total. I'll be adding that up at the end of the video. Real quick, my pottery course in Jingdezhen with Master John, the Global Pottery Bootcamp, is now open for enrollment. This is 10 days of pottery masterclasses taught in Jingdezhen, China, the porcelain capital of the world, with English translations, happening August 6th to 15th this summer. We already have students from all around the world enrolling, and it's so exciting seeing this cohort take shape. I have a whole video series on my channel where I document my journey learning pottery at Master John's school. So if you're interested in joining our group and experiencing this for yourself, I'll have the course info and link to enroll down below in the description. I am kind of sick right now. You can probably hear that in my voice. Apologies. This is like the first day in 3 weeks that I feel okay that I'm filming this video. I think I got like back-to-back illnesses somehow. I'm finally feeling better. I also got a haircut, which is fun for a change. I look a little different and actually like my 6th grade self again. This matcha that I'm drinking right now, I got while I was visiting New York at a cool cafe in the city called Watch House. Now that it's getting to be summer, all I want to drink is like an iced matcha latte. So that's the inspiration for the matcha set that I will attempt to throw today. I sketched out some designs here, pretty classic designs that I arrived at just by doing some basic research on chawan aesthetics. From what I gather, there are a couple important things about throwing chawan. You want to have this chadamari in the inside center of the bowl. That's like a little well where the last of the tea gathers. The actual slope and angle of the body, it shouldn't be too like sloped like this. It should actually be a little bit more like this. That way, when you're whisking with the chasen, the bamboo whisk, you're actually like rubbing up against the walls in the correct way to make your like frothy matcha. So I'm gonna attempt to incorporate those elements, and to complete my little set, I'll also be throwing a chasen holder. I think there are multiple names for it. I'm not really sure which one is correct. These ones I threw yesterday as practice, but I think I can do better. So yeah, let's get on with the making and with the tour. With most things in my studio, it starts at the workbench. Cool, because I'm already here. So this is the clay that I'll be using today. Even though I already wedged it before, I'm just gonna give it a fresh wedge up just to make sure that it's the right consistency. So when I first started in this space, I was using this terrible plastic folding table. It could not stand up to the force of wedging. I managed like that with the plastic table for about 5 months before I was like, I cannot do this anymore. So I'd say definitely invest in a good workbench early on. This one is by Husky. With pottery, the recommendation is to have like a non-sealed surface. That way it can wick moisture from clay when you're wedging so it doesn't stick, but I wasn't able to find one that was suitable for my needs and my price range. So I decided to go for this garage workbench, and it's been serving me really well. My workaround is just to add these like linens and cloths, canvas, and to have a separate wedging surface. I sit here to do all my hand building and also my brush glazing. And sometimes I just like to sit here on this chair that I picked up for free in the basement of my old apartment building and have my morning coffee or matcha and just enjoy being outdoors. All wedged up. Whew. So let's head over to the next stop on our tour, the wheel. To make this nice and easy for myself, I am going to be throwing off the hump. So all of this is going on the wheel in one go. This wheel is the Nidec Shimpo VL Whisper. I just wanted a popular and reliable wheel as my starter wheel. I really have no complaints about this wheel. It can go clockwise, counterclockwise, which is the way I throw. I like that it can handle a fair amount of clay, which is essential for throwing off the hump. and for throwing large pieces, which is something I eventually want to work up to. It is very silent, like you cannot hear it at all. And for someone like me who is really headache prone, it's important to me that I reduce the amount of like background whirring and buzzing as I work. The stool that I'm sitting on is just this old piano stool. It's nice because it's like cushioned and I adjust it as needed. I'm gonna go ahead and start my first throw. Yesterday I threw 6 matcha bowls. I think I threw them a little too small, so I'm gonna try to throw a bit bigger today. Looking good. Okay, apply slip from the hands to the form. A little wobbly on the first pull. It's like the first pancake, right? I kind of made a mistake stretching at the bottom a little too aggressively. It's like almost collapsed, but maybe I can try to bring it back. That's not too bad. It's totally savable. About 4.5 inches. Let me push it to 5. 5 inches to make your calamari. Press gently with your finger in the center to create a well. And then I'm going to make a little spout. I do that by putting 2 fingers like this, bracing the edge and using a wetted finger to just make that little spout. It seems a little scary to like press and drag that clay out, but that's the only way you'll actually get a lip that like curves downward and pours nicely. That's what I learned. I'm gonna just neaten that up. You don't want extra water to be sitting on there because then it could crack. Also learned from experience. Yay! I'm so glad that the first one turned out okay. Cutting right below. Another trick I learned, wipe the bottom of a piece on your hand where the slip is gathered. That'll create a little bit of glue that will help your piece stay put. So once I'm done throwing something, I just place the piece on the shelf that is conveniently located to my right. Those of you who watched my last video will know that this shelf was the first shelf that I bought for the studio, but it's of pretty poor quality. I bought an upgrade, a much larger and sturdier shelf. Then I realized that this shelf actually had a better use as a substitute wear board system. So I moved it from the corner to right here next to me. That way I have a place to put my freshly thrown pieces immediately after they come off the hump. I don't have to get up from my seat and like trip over myself. Once they're set up, I then move the pieces from here to my actual storage shelf. Let's move on to the next bowl. 5 inches. Press, press, press. Make sure that this is still round. Three thrown. I think I'm gonna get like 2 more out of this. What I'm actually gonna do now is take this clay, plus a little extra clay I have set aside, wedge that up again, and use that to throw my chasen holders. And I'm gonna throw these off the hump too. Cone up and down a couple times. I'm I'm sort of just making this up as I go. It's kind of fun though. Ooh. I saved it. Okay. Lift this off. Whew. There we go. Let's try another one. I'm gonna be a little bit more disciplined in my approach to this one. Okay. I'm just gonna throw a bunch of these. I think I'm getting better at this. I'm going to try to make this waist go in a little bit more to make sure that the bristles have enough room to slot underneath. I think this one is my best one yet. Last one. I think I've distilled this process into a few steps. Number one, retrieve a small amount of clay. Number two, pull it into a tiny cylinder. Number three, separate the base from the top with a little waist, and then shaping the top. 6, 7, 8, 8 total. One of them has got to work, right? Like I said before, once I'm done with my throwing session, I just let my pieces hang out here until they're a little bit drier. Usually that just takes about a day, and that's when I move the items over to my actual shelf, which is where we will head next. We'll table this and come back to it in just a sec. Not a whole lot to talk about here, but I'm gonna talk about it anyway. This is a shelf. In my last video, I actually showed how I put this all together and organized each of the shelves, so you can check that out if you really want to. I've got my one little matcha bowl here. Now what I'm gonna do is bring the matcha bowls that I threw yesterday over here, and then the rest of the things that I threw today will join them once they have had a chance to dry a little bit. These two will be going into Reclaim. I'm just like not a huge fan of the way this one looks, and this one has a big crack forming in the bottom, so it's gonna have to go to. Perfect segue, because the next part of the studio that I'll be showing you guys is my Reclaim system. Okay. My Reclaim system lives here in this little corner of my studio. It really just consists of a bunch of buckets and bins. So after throwing, any wet leftover clay gets dried out in this bin right here. I'll also like fish around in my throwing water for any lumps. Reach in there, find them, and then give them a squeeze to like get rid of the slip. This kind of semi-solid clay needs to dry out. Slip and clay water, on the other hand, goes directly in my big Reclaim bin right here. I'm gonna go put this in the sink. Same goes for any slip and water that has collected in my splash pan. Just give it a quick wipe for now, and we'll deal with it in the sink later. So once the clay is fully dried, it just gets poured right into the big bin to dissolve into the water. There. This is like my favorite part of the Reclaim process. Listen to that. Periodically, when this starts to get a little full, or if it's just been sitting for a little too long, I'll sponge or syringe the excess water off the top. It'll, settle out, the clay will settle out. I take the clay at the bottom and scoop it either onto this bin lid to dry out a little more, or directly onto my plaster bag. Once it's wedged up, I put it away into plastic bags and onto the bottom shelf of my storage rack. As of right now, I work exclusively with Cone 10 porcelain. I have 3 different porcelain clay bodies, and I do keep them separate, but since they're all white and Cone 10, I'm not terribly concerned about a little bit of cross-contamination. So this is one clay type, and this is another clay type, but I work primarily with that one just to keep things simple. Let's finish cleaning up so that I can move on and talk about the other big piece of equipment in my studio, my kiln. I am pretty fortunate that my back porch already has plumbing or a sink installation, but I did have to buy this sink separately. It is not hooked up to the drainage pipe below, which meant installation was very straightforward. And the reason why I don't have it hooked up to drainage is so I can just capture all the clay that I'm washing from my splash pan and my tools in a bucket that I can just add back to my reclaim without having to install a clay trap. Since I'm washing only clay stuff right now, I have a dedicated bucket just for clay underneath catching all the water. It's labeled right here, clay water, so I don't mix it up on accident with my other bucket, which is wastewater. You can see just from the color, it's a little like green-gray. This is for everything else that isn't clay. When this fills up, I just go take it outside and like water the plants with it. It's really nothing like crazy that I'm washing in there. I try to be good about emptying this wastewater bucket outside before it gets too heavy, but sometimes I do get lazy and like let it fill up to the very top, in which case I'll use this to just siphon out some of the water into a separate bucket so I can like divide it and conquer. And that gets the job done. I'm gonna get off my butt and get this clean so we can finally talk kiln. All cleaned up. Let's head on over to the kiln. I'm here already. I've received a number of comments asking me what kiln I use and what I think of it, so I'm here to tell you all my thoughts. Just to explain how I ended up with this kiln, initially when trying to figure out how to fire my pieces, I considered going the kiln share / community studio route, but that didn't end up panning out for me due to a lack of options locally. So I thought, okay, that means I need my own kiln. So I considered getting a Scut 8 or 10 brick kiln, but then I quickly realized that I would need to call an electrician to come in and install a 240 volt outlet in my home. The cost of the model of kiln that I wanted, plus the cost of the electrician, would probably run me upwards of $5,000. That was just not a move I was comfortable making, considering I'm still relatively new at doing pottery. So I kind of felt stuck, but around then is when I discovered the existence of these tiny kilns. They're sometimes also called doll kilns or craft or test kilns. They're really not meant for production, but for me, this was the perfect place to start my kiln ownership journey. So this is the L&L plug-in fire kiln. This plugs right into your standard 120 volt outlet. If you're in the United States, the regular outlets, home outlets, are 120 volts and 15 amps, which is exactly the specs you need for this kiln, as you can see, or maybe you can't, I think maybe the plant's blocking it, but it's just plugging it right into the wall. It's cone 10 rated, more on that later, and it came with a Genesis mini touchscreen controller that I use to program my firings. It opens just like this from the hinges, and its internal dimensions are 8 by 8 by 9 inches. That comes out to me an internal volume of only 0.33 cubic feet. So it is tiny. For a glaze firing, it can only fit like 3 standard size mugs or cups. There were like a few other models that I considered getting from different kiln manufacturers. For example, the Olympic Doll E kiln, the Scut Firebox, but this is the one I settled on. Honestly, the reason why I went for this one over the other models was that it was ready to ship. Some of the other kilns had lead times of up to 10 to 12 weeks, and I was just not about to wait that long. So this kiln it was. Pros of this kiln, I just wrote down my notes so I wouldn't forget anything. They're cheaper to start. It's a lot more manageable than $3,500 plus the cost of an electrician for your first kiln. Second pro is super easy to install. I was able to assemble the kiln entirely on my own just by stacking the components, and then I plugged it in and it was ready to fire. So the name does not lie. The third pro is that it is fantastic for test tiles and small batches, so you don't have to feel pressured to fill up a giant kiln just to test a new glaze combo or get your finished pieces. So the turnaround time can be pretty fast. How long a firing takes exactly will depend on what cone you're firing to and your program, how slow or fast it is. But for me, cone 10 glaze firing takes about 16 hours and an additional 12 hours or so to cool completely. And the final pro that I have is that it's small and discreet, and for the casual home potter, it may be the perfect kiln. You may not need to upgrade beyond this if you're just doing pottery for fun at home and you're not making a ton of pieces. Now on to the cons, because there are definitely some cons, but they are really situational. First one is that because it's so small, you can only fire small pieces. Take a plate, for example. The biggest I can throw a plate is 8 inches, and once that's done all its shrinking, it ends up being about like 7 inches across, probably even a little less. And forget tall pieces, the kiln furniture in here already takes up quite a bit of the height in the kiln, like 3.5 inches. The next con is smaller loads means more firing cycles to fire the same number of pieces, and more firing cycles equals faster wear and tear on the kiln elements. I actually learned this kind of the hard way. I was doing a cone 10 program, and around cone 8, the temperature wasn't ramping up fast enough and it threw an error and like the entire program stopped. I ended up needing to order replacement elements. So that's something to keep in mind. These parts don't last forever. To be fair, that's true of any kiln, but it makes sense that with such a tiny kiln, like it will wear down a lot faster. You should be budgeting for maintenance every 30 to 40 firings or so. And that's not a hard rule, but it's a rough benchmark based on my experience. And that brings me to the next con, which is related. This kiln may be rated to cone 10, but in practice it does seem to struggle a bit firing to that high of a temperature. When I talked to the L&L kiln tech on the phone, they explained that for regular cone 10 use, I actually need a kiln that's rated to cone 12, and that's not something I was aware of. I definitely think that's like a little misleading that a cone 10 rated kiln shouldn't really be fired to cone 10. I also think this might be an L&L specific thing, but either way, just like don't make the same mistakes I did, or at least be more informed than I was, or maybe even call up a kiln tech while you're making your purchase, just so they can fill in your knowledge gaps. And the last con is sort of just like a summary of all the cons. If you're planning to scale up your pottery production, you may feel yourself outgrowing this kiln rather quickly. Whereas before, I liked the freedom that it gave me to experiment, now that I kind of know what works, I just feel like it's slowing down my overall process and making me less efficient because each firing is with so few pieces. Given all that, would I recommend this kiln? And the answer is yes, the product is great. It's been serving me very well. Just be aware of its many limitations. I think actually a more telling question would be, if I could do this all again, would I go the same route? And the answer is still yes. Even though I feel myself outgrowing this kiln, it still made the most sense for me financially and practically to start small. This kiln is a great stepping stone, and the ability to do more frequent and smaller firings when you're starting out is definitely an underrated plus. But honestly, 6 months in, I am dreaming of a bigger kiln. This load is ready to go for a bisque fire. There's some cups, test tiles, and I have this design for chopstick rest that I'm testing out. Let's fire her up and get her going. Where I went to university, nearby there was an L&L, not the kiln manufacturer, but the Hawaiian barbecue joint. We loved going there for like a late night meal, and for the longest time, whenever I said L&L, I would think about Hawaiian barbecue, but I think now I finally like reprogrammed my brain to like not make that association. But now I really want Hawaiian barbecue. Cone 06, and so you'll start hearing the little relay go click, click, click. There you go. We are getting to the end of our tour. I do have a few other gadgets in here that I want to mention. The first being my air purifier. To be totally honest, I don't really know if it does anything. I think it's enough for me that I wear a mask while trimming, and I'm already outdoors, but I guess the air purifier is nice because it makes me feel like I'm doing something for my health. I also have a tower fan right next to my wheel and a ceiling fan. I usually run those simultaneously to help me keep cool. As for lighting, it gets very bright here during the day. These outdoor blinds I had installed to help keep this area shaded from the direct sunlight, which would totally mess me up since I'm sitting out here for like hours at a time. I pretty much never roll them up. When it's dark out, I turn on the overhead fan light or the built-in porch lights. I take out this clip-on light, clip this on to my splash pan, like that. That way it illuminates what my hands are doing. This is just a super cheap lamp that's actually meant to clip onto your headboard of your bed. I used it back in the day in college to journal in bed, so it's kind of cute how it's still useful now, but in a very different context. Really, there's not much going on from an interior decoration standpoint. I have this one framed piece of art, and then I've got some plants. Since this is my parents' place, I'm just not ready to spend that much on decor that feels too indulgent and too permanent. The studio, I love it, but it's more like the studio of my reality. One day, I'll build the studio of my dreams. One day. So let's talk numbers. I've kept an expense tracker of every pottery related purchase I've ever made, but since this is a studio tour, I won't be going into the costs of all my supplies. I'll just be talking about like the big ticket items. This is all including tax and shipping, by the way. The Workbench is Husky. I got it from Home Depot and it cost me $296.97. Wheel is a Shimpo VL Whisper. I got that from Kruger Pottery Supply for $1,545.60. The small shelf was $38.87 from Amazon. I cannot recommend it, but I still do use it. My main storage shelf is by Gorilla from Costco. Cost me $96.29. Buckets, lots of buckets, both Home Depot and Costco. They probably cost me like $20 in total. Kiln is the L&L plug-in fire purchased from Sheffield Pottery, $1,603.93. Air purifier is by Winix, cost me $138.03 from Costco. I spent $105.93 on the blinds, $138.03 on the sink, $170.13 on the ceiling fan and light, all from Home Depot, and $350 on the installation for all of those items. And I'm gonna throw this into my recent purchase of 2 elements and a thermocouple and an extra kiln shelf to repair my kiln from L&L was $157.50. That all comes out to a total of $4,661.28. That obviously is not cheap, but it did line up with what I expected and what I budgeted to get the studio up and running. Could I have done it for less? Probably, by buying secondhand. But for me, the peace of mind and quality guarantee buying direct from supplier and buying new has totally been worth it. My soft goal for the end of this year is to be able to buy back the cost of my studio through my business and to save up enough to buy a new, bigger kiln. If you're currently trying to set up your own studio, I wish you luck. I know it's tough out there right now with the prices, but I hope this video can help you decide what to buy for your studio, what's worth it versus what you can try to go for secondhand. I myself have actually been thinking of getting another wheel, and that is because I am actually planning to move my studio indoors, which I know is ironic that I just did this studio tour. I feel like I catfished you guys, but I swear there's a good reason. While my wheel, like my primary wheel, is inside for throwing, I would have to keep another one outside for trimming. In any case, future studio upgrades will engender future studio tour videos. I feel like I haven't forgotten anything, but I'm sure there's more I could address. So if you guys have any more questions, leave them below in the comments and I'll try to get around to answering them. And as for these chawan and chasen holders, I am really excited to trim them up and get them finished so I can start using them in my daily matcha ritual. Not sure what I'll glaze them with, but I'm thinking maybe the same color scheme as the cup. It would be pretty apt because the name of this glaze is green tea. Thanks for being patient while I worked on this video. Oh, and don't forget to sign up for the Global Pottery Bootcamp. And I will see you next time.